Mortal Kombat has always been about visceral, gratuitous action, with gore spatters rendered in as much terrible detail as the hardware of the day will allow. At the cusp of the 9th gen, at a time when home consoles are more powerful than the supercomputers from Mortal Kombat 2's time, there's nothing more right or more appropriate than for such a long-lived franchise to send off the PS4 and Xbox One, not to mention the now venerable Unreal 3 engine. Amidst the gore, stray eyeballs, and brain matter, it's time to say goodbye. In this technical deep dive, we're going to take a look at how NetherRealm's latest coaxes a remarkable visual spectacle from aging hardware and an aging engine. Engine history. So let's get this out of the way. If you've not been paying attention to tech bylines over the past few weeks, Mortal Kombat 11 does not run on the modern Unreal 4 engine. Instead, just like Mortal Kombat X in the 2011 reboot, it's running on the previous gen Unreal 3 engine. Since the launch of the original Gears of War in 2006, Epic's engine has had a surprisingly long lifespan, thanks in large part to a generous, source-available licensing policy. Thanks to its scalability, indie studios and mobile developers have used it to create remarkable experiences like Infinity Blade on iOS. At the other end of the spectrum, heavily customized versions of the engine beat at the heart of many visually arresting AAA titles, such as Batman Arkham Knight and the Borderlands series. Thanks to the relatively open nature of the engine, with source code available to developers, it's relatively easy to drop in specific modules to suit the needs of particular titles. This is the adaptability that has made everything from first and third person shooters to RTSs to adventure games possible on the engine. And then of course there's NetherRealm's take on the engine, adapting it to fit the needs of the fighting game genre. Mortal Kombat 11 isn't NetherRealm's first Unreal 3 based fighting game though. It's not even the first Mortal Kombat the studio has handled. So if we want to look at the technical underpinnings of NetherRealm's particular fork of this engine, it makes sense to go travel back nearly a decade to 2011's Mortal Kombat, and then to the Injustice games. Delving back into the source material from that time period, it's evident that many of the key engine modifications seen in Mortal Kombat 11 have been around for quite a while on NetherRealm's fork. Frame rate and key optimizations, reaching 60 FPS. So for starters, let's talk frame rates. Mortal Kombat 11 is a fighting game, and low input lag isn't nice to have, it's key to a competitive experience. The game and its predecessors were built around a rock-solid 60 FPS update. At first glance, Unreal 3 doesn't look like the ideal engine for this kind of game. It was built with 7th gen console shooters in mind. Typical workflows and frame budgeting in titles like Gears of War and Borderlands target a 720p 30 FPS update for an experience that's high on visual spectacle but not particularly responsive. This focus on visuals over frame rate is evident in the kind of 7th gen titles utilizing Unreal 3. Unlike the id Tech engine, for instance, few high frame rate Twitch shooters were made for the console using Unreal 3. The bulk of first and third person shooters built on the engine, from Mass Effect to Bulletstorm, targeted a cinematic 30 FPS. Lavish alpha, relatively wide draw distances, and even NVIDIA PhysX effects are perfectly acceptable if you're not targeting the most responsive experience. Fighting games demand minimal input lag, silky smooth frame rates, and rock-solid consistency, even at the expense of visuals and scale. id Tech 5, on the other hand, was built from the ground up on the premise of delivering responsive 60 FPS gameplay on PS3 and Xbox 360, something that Rage definitely delivered on. Ironically, The Evil Within was a third-person horror game that repurposed id Tech 5 to deliver a 30 FPS experience so cinematic it was actually presented in 21:9 with black bars and everything. With Mortal Kombat's hardcore competitive fanbase, there's just no way the game could work as a 30 FPS experience. It has to be responsive and it has to hit 60 FPS, even on the base consoles, while still delivering a visual spectacle. So this means that corners have to be cut. Optimization is crucial to handing in a consistent high frame rate experience. Culling. Going back to the 2011 reboot, it's evident that many of NetherRealm Studios' design choices for the original carried over to Mortal Kombat 11 and the 8th gen consoles. For starters, and unlike in earlier 3D outings in the series, most of the action takes place on a 2D plane. The crypt, of course, is in third person, but with action considerably toned down. Constraining camera angles makes culling a much easier task. Quick technical recap here, culling refers to selectively not rendering objects in order to improve performance. Unreal 3 titles tend to be shooters or semi-open world experiences, so distance culling is typically used. This is when geometry is culled past a certain max view distance and replaced with sprites or low poly LODs. Mortal Kombat appears to use dynamic occlusion culling instead, where objects are culled when they are not in the camera's view. In shooters with user-controlled camera movement, this tends to be more expensive than distance culling, since the camera visibility of objects has to be constantly updated. With a fixed view, however, dynamic occlusion culling is much cheaper since camera position is a predictable variable. This by itself can significantly boost performance, as only a small visible section of a level, the part the camera is fixed on, really has to be rendered at any given time. The Unreal 3 SDK also has a function called pre-computed visibility, which, as the name indicates, allows you to compute culling areas beforehand to free up even more GPU time. Mortal Kombat 11's fixed camera positioning is a very good use case for this, and pre-computed visibility culling is a likely optimization in use. Enhancements: model poly counts, shading, lighting, and more. Polygon counts. While the limited scope of the game plays a big role in allowing it to run at such a high frame rate, this also allows headroom for some spectacular visuals. The focus here is on the character models. We'd be lying if we weren't floored by the sheer density of detail. We're approaching the point where focused experiences like fighting and sports games feature visuals that are just on the threshold of photorealism. When playing Mortal Kombat 11, you'd be forgiven for momentarily confusing an in-engine cutscene with CGI. Mesh detail plays a major role here. Polygon counts are in the high 5 digits. Details such as the decorative whorls on Kotal Khan's helmet, which would have been normally mapped in other games, are sculpted out of actual geometry. It's evident that the art team has made full use of the poly count, factoring in high model complexity in their workflow. Organic, curved objects feature prominently, even in places where sharp corners wouldn't be immediately noticed. For instance, the leather straps on Cassie's outfit curve sinuously. While aesthetically pleasing, these could have easily been substituted with a straight design and no one would have been the wiser. Raiden's belt rope has a tasseled end with each one of the many segments moving independently. 2 generations ago, the belt itself would have probably just been a texture. Hair rendering also receives a boost in fidelity thanks to the increased poly count. Characters don't sport a hair helmet look, and hair strands are fine enough that they don't look artificially coarse. Textures. Texture work is phenomenal and effectively complements the high poly models. We're looking at 2K and 4K textures across the board here. Unlike open world titles, where the large environmental textures can gobble up VRAM, the focus here is on quality over quantity. This has allowed the artists at NetherRealm to add high frequency detailing from skin pores to a tarnish on metal, and scale this down to the VRAM-starved base platforms without compromising on texture resolution. Skin and material rendering. The way skin is handled deserves special mention here. Skin rendering's always been difficult to pull off in-game. Subsurface scattering has been implemented to simulate light transport through skin, and while it's a subtle effect, subsurface scattering can be easily seen in scenes where the faces of characters receive direct lighting. In many games, the lack of simulated light transport results in skin having a waxy cast with it. With subsurface scattering enabled, the interaction of skin with light is handled much more realistically. The high-quality shader work here combines with high-frequency textures that capture individual skin pores and complex meshes that add natural irregularity and roughness to the surface, as well as providing depth to scars. This results in some of the most natural-looking skin that we've seen in any game. Other materials apart from the skin also look great though. Materials in-game are well-designed with plenty of high-frequency detail, and they sit well in the environments. Art design. Because of how constrained they are, environments are lavished with plenty of detail. The art style strays a bit away from photorealism. Character limb proportions are somewhat exaggerated, and the lighting, which we'll talk about here in a bit, veers towards bright and shiny as opposed to realistic. The result is visuals that look more akin to CGI than live action. The Crypt. Speaking of environments, let's have a quick look at the Crypt. It offers an interesting change of pace relative to the frenetic one-on-one fighting elsewhere in the game. While still very much a constrained space, relative to other games at least, the Crypt does allow you to explore a small part of Mortal Kombat 11's environment from a standard third-person view. The Crypt is all about exploration. You can break things with the Warhammer of Shao Kahn, but it's a simple one-button affair. And as we mentioned earlier, a good part of the frame rate optimization in Mortal Kombat 11 derives from the very effective culling on fixed camera angle scenarios. This obviously can't be done in the Crypt as it plays out in third person. We actually like the Crypt's more contemplative pacing. Hints of From Software's work come through in the environmental storytelling though, and of course there's no real combat as such. Lighting. Lighting is an area where Mortal Kombat 11's design has helped it overcome the limitations of the aging platform that it was built on. By default, Unreal 3 features a forward renderer which, while generally performant, introduces a penalty for multiple dynamic light sources. Forward rendering is a bit of a problem when it comes to lighting in shooters, since not all light sources in a game can be made dynamic without suffering a massive performance penalty. Dynamic lighting is a very important part of the visual makeup of modern games though, and as such, some modern titles based on Unreal 3, like Arkham Knight and Mortal Kombat 11, have a bespoke deferred rendering path added in. This allows for a large number of light casting sources seen in the crypt, as well as adding visual flair to regular maps, with backdrops like lava surfaces casting light. Global illumination is visible here too, and Unreal 3's light mask solution has likely been utilized to pre-compute indirect lighting. Dynamic global illumination is expensive, but it makes more sense in a broad interactive environments. Mortal Kombat 11's constrained stages make it an ideal candidate for a pre-computed solution like light masks. Almost all light casting sources are static and can't be interacted with, since they're outside the plane of the playable area. Global illumination works well with the game's art design too. The environment receives indirect lighting from a large number of glowing objects in-game. Ambient occlusion handles indirect shadowing, helping to ground things even further. Particles. Particle effects are a step up from previous titles. Particle rendering is especially important in a gorefest like Mortal Kombat 11. Hardware acceleration helps here too, leveraging the compute power of the console's Radeon GPUs. This allows for particles with at least a certain degree of persistence, metal sparks for instance, to actually fall on the ground and rest there before being culled. Along with blood spray, gore has a polygonal element with stray eyeballs and bits of brain matter rendered well enough to look decent when zoomed in on during fatalities. Anti-aliasing. Mortal Kombat 11 makes use of a post-processed solution for anti-aliasing. This is necessary because of the use of deferred rendering. Hardware anti-aliasing just doesn't play nice with deferred renderers, at least without a massive performance cost. On console, temporal anti-aliasing is used. While adding a bit of blur to overall IQ, TAA does a great job of smoothing out jaggies. PC players also have the option of either using cheaper FXAA or combining it with TAA. Super sampling is also a possibility. Considering how well the game runs, 4K 60 is doable on mainstream hardware. Simply downsampling from a higher resolution may be enough to net great image quality at 1080p without sacrificing performance. This is obviously not an option on console, unless of course you've got a PS4 Pro or Xbox One X hooked up to a 1080p television. Animation. Animations are good, not great. The poor quality of in-game animations, the sense of tankiness, is an issue in all of NetherRealm's recent fighting games, from older iterations of Mortal Kombat to the Injustice series. It's a stylistic choice though. Some might prefer the immediacy of one-to-one response to controller input, but in action, NetherRealm's fighting games look and feel a bit choppy. Thanks to a rejigged animation system, Mortal Kombat 11 characters move noticeably smoother than those in Injustice and the older Mortal Kombat titles. Idle animations have been overhauled from the frankly ridiculous slow-motion hip gyration in Mortal Kombat X. Best of all, skeletal animation is better with, for instance, foot positioning now correlating better with other movements like punching. Cutscenes. And lastly, let's talk about cutscenes. From a visual point of view, Mortal Kombat 11's real highlight is several hours of gorgeously rendered in-engine cutscenes. Cutscenes are capped at 30 FPS. This serves two purposes. First, it allows the dynamic resolution scaler to deliver peak output for optimal image quality, and second, it offers enough headroom to present higher quality assets than those used during gameplay. Asset quality is fantastic here, and the cutscenes are broadly comparable to CGI from about a decade ago. All in all, Mortal Kombat 11 is a showcase of the power of optimization. NetherRealm's managed to squeeze a lot out of an ancient engine and aging hardware. At 16.33 milliseconds of frame, there are always limitations in terms of what's technically possible without sacrificing on that smooth 60 FPS update. But because Mortal Kombat 11 is a fighting game with limited camera movement, a big chunk of that frame budget can be spent on maximizing frame quality. NetherRealm's extensive modifications of the Unreal 3 engine are showing here. Compared to older games built on the engine, such as those in the Gears of War franchise, Mortal Kombat 11's visuals are a generation apart. The game also compares very favorably to recent titles built on Unreal 4. While the newer engine has a great selection of features that just work out of the box, the fundamentals, high quality artwork, dense high poly meshes, and a generous budget for alpha effects really shine through in Mortal Kombat 11. Even if it was built on an older engine, it's one of the best performing and best looking titles on 8th gen platforms. And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily. Also, don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon, that way you don't miss out on any of our videos.